Whether you are actively prepping for your BCBA exam or you're just someone who wants to deeply understand the true science of human behavior, welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah, we have a really great, incredibly practical stack of sources in front of us today.
We really do. We are pulling directly from BCBA's 6th edition study guides, a series of comprehensive mock exams, and several clinical case workbooks.
Which are packed with real-world scenarios, so it's not just theory.
Exactly. And our mission today is to conquer BCBA task list item D.3.
Right, identifying threats to internal validity.
We're going to unpack exactly what these threats are, the sneaky ways they infiltrate your data, and how you can definitively stop them.
Because they will wreck your research if you aren't careful.
Oh, absolutely. So to get us started, I want you to imagine a scenario. You implement a brand new behavior plan.
Okay, thank you.
You pour hours into the research, you train the staff, and boom, the client's target behavior improves.
The dream scenario.
Right. The aggression drops, the communication goes up. It is exactly what you hope for. Time to celebrate, right?
I mean, it is the ultimate scientific buzzkill, but popping the champagne at that exact moment is entirely premature.
Wait, really? Why?
Because the nagging question that immediately has to be answered is, how do you actually know your intervention caused that change?
Oh, I see. Like, what if your behavior plan had absolutely nothing to do with it?
Exactly. What if you are just taking credit for a total coincidence?
That is terrifying for a clinician.
It is. And we are talking about threats to internal validity here. These are the hidden variables, the absolute tricksters of the experimental world.
The things that can completely fool a researcher or a clinician into thinking their treatment worked when it actually failed.
Right. But before we start naming these specific tricksters, we really need to define the battleground itself.
Yeah, let's do that. What exactly is internal validity, and how does it separate actual science from just, guessing?
So looking at the core definitions from our study guides, internal validity is the degree to which an experiment accurately measures the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable.
Let's translate that a bit. So in simpler terms, your independent variable is your intervention, right?
Yes, and your dependent variable is the behavior you are tracking.
Got it.
So internal validity asks one highly specific, relentless question. Did A truly cause B?
Did your specific token economy actually cause the decrease in shouting, or was it something else entirely?
Exactly. And we also have to draw a hard line between internal validity and external validity.
Because they sound like two sides of the same coin, but they do completely different jobs.
They really do. External validity is simply about generalization.
Like taking it out into the real world.
Right. If your intervention worked flawlessly for one specific client in a highly controlled, quiet clinic, external validity asks if that exact same intervention will also work for a totally different client in a chaotic public school cafeteria.
But I'm guessing you cannot even begin to worry about external validity if you do not have internal validity established first.
You absolutely cannot. You have to definitively prove the intervention works in a vacuum before you worry about taking it on the road.
I like to visualize internal validity, like taking a brand new daily vitamin.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah. Let's say you start taking a magnesium supplement on a Monday, and by Thursday, you are looking significantly better.
Okay. Sounds like a success.
But internal validity asks, was it truly the magnesium that improved your sleep? Or did the weather just cool down?
Right. Or did you buy new pillows?
Exactly. Did you happen to stop drinking coffee at 4 in the afternoon that same week?
There are so many other factors.
Yeah, if you cannot confidently rule out the weather, the pillows, or the coffee, your magnesium experiment has terrible internal validity.
Because you have introduced multiple potential causes.
Which the sources call confounding variables, right?
Yes. And here is where it gets incredibly tricky for students taking the BCBA exam.
Oh, tell me. I love a good exam tip.
There is a specific detail from the mock exam sources, specifically question 127 in the packet, that highlights a massive trap.
Okay, what is the trap?
A common mistake when analyzing research scenarios is confusing the concept of maintenance with internal validity.
Oh, interesting. Because clinically, we love maintenance.
We do.
I mean, the whole goal of applied behavior analysis is that we want the behavior to maintain over time, long after the therapist has left the room.
And maintaining a behavior change over time after the intervention is faded is absolutely a clinical success.
But it's not validity.
No. The sources are explicit. Maintenance is not a measure of internal validity.
It just tells you if the behavior stuck around.
Exactly. Internal validity is strictly about the cause and effect relationship during the actual study.
Did the intervention cause the change in the first place?
Right. If you do not have internal validity, your maintenance data is effectively useless.
Because you are just tracking the long-term maintenance of a coincidence.
That is exactly it. You're tracking a coincidence.
Wow. Okay, so we are hunting for hidden variables that mess with cause and effect. Now that we have the definitions locked down, let's look at the first two culprits from the sources.
These are arguably the most common ones.
And what is fascinating here is that these two threats are simply byproducts of the unstoppable march of time.
Right. We are talking about history and maturation.
Let's start with history.
Time is arguably the biggest threat to any behavioral intervention, simply because human beings do not exist in a vacuum.
Right.
So history refers to external events occurring outside the experiment, but at the exact same time, the intervention is happening.
So real-world life events happening to the client.
Yeah. Let's say you implement a new classroom management plan to reduce a student's elopement, running away from their desk.
Okay.
3 days into your beautiful new plan, the elopement drops to 0.
Amazing.
But simultaneously, the client goes on a relaxing family vacation.
Oh, I see.
Or maybe a new sibling is born at home, or perhaps their pediatrician just put them on a new ADHD medication.
Those are history effects.
Exactly. You look at your graph and think your behavior plan worked, but it was actually the new medication settling their system.
So while history covers the external world changing, maturation is the internal version of that, right?
Yes, precisely. Maturation refers to natural, internal, biological, or psychological changes occurring within the participant simply because time is passing.
As individuals grow older, develop new neurological pathways, or just experience changes in their physical maturity, their behavior naturally shifts.
And this brings up a massive challenge for long-term behavioral studies.
I have to jump in here because honestly, maturation feels like a massive clinical cop-out to me.
A cop-out. How so?
Well, let's say I am working in a clinic with a 4-year-old for 6 straight months, and I'm pouring my heart into a DRA, a differential reinforcement of alternative behavior program.
Okay, a classic intervention.
Right, just to unpack that briefly for anyone listening, a DRA means I am actively ignoring their tantrums and heavily rewarding a positive alternative, like using a communication device. So after 6 months of grueling work, the tantrums finally stop. I am taking the credit.
Of course you want the credit.
How could a critic possibly look at my data and say, well, maybe the kid just outgrew the terrible twos? Why is the burden of proof on me to prove it wasn't just natural aging?
Because without that proof, you are practicing faith, not science.
Ouch. Fair, but ouch.
I know. But if you just measure a baseline, implement the DRA, and watch the behavior slowly improve over 6 months, you have 0 internal validity.
Because I have no mathematical way to prove the DRA did the heavy lifting.
Exactly. This is exactly why the sources heavily emphasize single-case experimental designs.
Like the withdrawal or reversal design.
Yes, which is often called an ABEB design.
Unpack the mechanics of that for us. Because this is how we actually fight back against the maturation threat.
The A stands for your baseline condition, and the B stands for your intervention condition.
Okay, A is baseline, B is intervention.
In an ABEB design, you establish baseline logic using 3 dimensions: prediction, verification, and replication.
So first, you measure the tantrums before doing anything.
That is your first A. You predict that without intervention, the tantrums will continue.
Then you implement the DRA.
That is your first B, and the tantrums drop.
Now, to completely rule out maturation, you do something drastic.
Very drastic. You actively withdraw the intervention.
You stop rewarding the communication device and go back to baseline conditions.
Right.
Which feels completely counterintuitive clinically. I mean, you finally have a kid succeeding, and the science demands you take away the very thing helping them.
It is difficult, yes, but it is scientifically necessary to verify your initial prediction.
How does that verify it?
It is like flipping a circuit breaker. If you flip a switch and the lights go out in the kitchen, you have verified that specific switch controls that specific power source.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
When you withdraw the DRA, if the tantrums do not return to their high baseline levels, you might be looking at a maturation effect.
The child simply outgrew the behavior, and your intervention is no longer needed.
Exactly. But if you remove the DRA and the tantrums immediately shoot back up,
then you have verified that your intervention was holding the behavior in place, not the natural passage of time.
Precisely. And then you flip the circuit breaker back on.
You put the DRA back in place, the final B, and the tantrums drop again.
You have replicated the effect. You have proven that the behavior turns on and off precisely when you introduce or remove your independent variable.
That is the gold standard for internal validity. You have isolated your intervention from the chaotic timeline of the child's life.
You really have.
So we solve the problem of time and maturation by repeatedly measuring the behavior and flipping that switch.
Right.
But the paradox our sources point out is that the more you measure a human being, the more they change, simply because you are measuring them.
Which brings us to the observer effect, covering testing and instrumentation.
Let's start with testing.
Testing effects occur when the simple act of taking a measurement influences the behavior being measured.
So just taking a test changes things.
Yeah, this is particularly relevant when participants take repeated pre-tests or assessments. Just taking a test can cause a client to change their behavior because they become hyper-aware of the testing environment and what the researcher is looking for.
It is like knowing the doctor is about to take your blood pressure.
Exactly.
The second they put the cuff on your arm, your heart rate automatically goes up because you are nervous about the test itself.
The measurement tool altered the dependent variable.
Or like if a student knows a behavior analyst is standing in the back of the classroom with a clipboard staring at them.
Oh, they know. They always know.
Right. They might temporarily stop calling out in class entirely due to reactivity.
And you think your plan is working.
But the classroom management system isn't effective at all. The clipboard is just intimidating.
Which leads directly into the next threat instrumentation.
How is that different from testing?
Testing is about the client changing due to measurement. Instrumentation is about the measurement tool itself changing over time.
Okay, give me an example.
If a researcher switches from a complex paper behavior checklist to a streamlined digital tracking app midway through a study, the data might suddenly look different.
But the client's behavior didn't change at all.
No, the instrument capturing it did.
Instrumentation is like stepping on a bathroom scale that has a slowly rusting spring inside of it.
I love that analogy.
Right, you step on it every single week and the number keeps going down.
Yes.
You think you are losing weight, you are celebrating a massive lifestyle change.
But in reality, your body hasn't changed an ounce.
The instrument itself is just wearing out and delivering a falsely lighter number.
And in applied behavior analysis, our instruments are almost always human beings taking data.
And humans get tired.
They get tired, they get distracted, they bring their own biases.
Which leads to what the sources call observer drift, right?
Yes, a massive instrumentation threat. Over the course of a 3-month study, observers unconsciously change how they apply the operational definition of a behavior.
So in week 1, an observer might strictly define a tantrum as any whining or crying.
But by week 12, the observer is so burned out and used to the whining that they only hit the clicker and record a tantrum if the child actually throws a chair.
Wow. So the graph is going to show that tantrums have completely plummeted.
But the reality is the staff just got desensitized.
That is wild. But it's not just the measurement tool breaking down that we have to worry about, right? What if the treatment itself is falling apart?
Ah, yes. The sources place a huge emphasis on procedural integrity here.
Procedural integrity or treatment integrity. What does that actually mean in practice?
It asks whether the independent variable is actually being applied exactly as designed.
Because it is not enough for the staff to record the data correctly.
No, they have to execute the intervention correctly.
Okay, so if the behavior plan dictates that a student gets a token every 5 minutes for staying on task,
But the teacher gets busy and only hands out a token every 20 minutes.
your procedural integrity is ruined.
Exactly. If the behavior doesn't change, you don't know if the token economy is a bad idea or if it just wasn't actually implemented.
So how do we fix a rusting spring when the spring is a human being?
You calibrate your humans through continuous training and inter-observer agreement, or IOA.
IOA. This is a big one on the exams.
Huge! You cannot just train your staff on day 1 and assume they will be perfect 3 months later.
So what does IOA actually look like?
IOA involves having 2 completely independent observers take data on the exact same behavior at the exact same time and calculating how mathematically often they agree.
So if observer A is standing in the corner and records 10 tantrums,
And observer B is sitting at the desk and only records 5.
your human instrument is completely broken.
Yes. If your IOA calculation falls below an acceptable threshold, which the field generally accepts as 80%, it is a glaring red flag for an instrumentation threat.
It means your definitions are too vague or your staff are drifting.
And you have to halt the experiment, retrain the observers, tighten up the definitions, and ensure multiple people consistently agree on reality.
It is literally the only way to protect the validity of your measurement.
Okay, but let's say we have completely battled the passage of time with reversal designs,
We have perfectly calibrated our human observers with IOA.
and we have stellar procedural integrity.
We have perfectly trained staff and completely unaware participants. We're safe, right?
Not even close. According to the mock exams, the math itself can still lie to you.
Oh, great. Let's dive into the data illusions, statistical regression, selection, and attrition.
These threats happen almost entirely in the numbers, making them incredibly dangerous because they are invisible if you aren't actively hunting for them.
Let's start with statistical regression.
Widely known as regression to the mean, it is a mathematical phenomenon where participants with extremely high or extremely low scores will naturally pull closer to their true average over time, regardless of any intervention you apply.
This one explains so much of human life.
It really does.
Imagine you are consulting with a family and their child has the absolute worst, most aggressive Tuesday of their entire life.
They are completely off the baseline charts.
The parents are desperate. So on Wednesday morning, you implement a brand new behavior plan.
And by Wednesday afternoon, the aggression drops by 50%.
You think you are a genius. The parents think your plan is a miracle cure.
But mathematically, that child could not possibly maintain that 99th percentile extreme high.
The law of averages dictated they were always going to have a calmer Wednesday,
They simply regressed back down to their normal, everyday average.
which translates into a massive exam strategy point and a vital clinical warning.
A very common mistake is relying on a single extreme data point to justify an intervention's success.
The sources are adamant about this. Researchers must analyze trend lines across multiple, stable measurements.
You cannot implement an intervention immediately after the worst day ever and claim victory the next day.
You need a stable baseline to ensure you aren't just witnessing statistical gravity pulling an outlier back to Earth.
Always look at the trend line, never just the single dot.
Okay, what about selection bias?
Selection bias occurs when there are systematic differences in how participants are chosen for a study or how they are assigned to experimental groups.
Meaning your sample is completely unrepresentative of the real world.
Right. Imagine you are testing a brand new reading comprehension intervention, and you only select students to participate who already have library cards and love reading for fun.
Well, your intervention is going to look wildly successful.
But that success is entirely due to the pre-existing traits of the group you selected, not the mechanics of the reading program itself.
In massive group designs, researchers control for this by using random assignment, right?
They do. But in applied behavior analysis, we almost exclusively use single-case designs.
We are usually working with one specific client at a time.
So selection bias for a BCBA means being incredibly careful that the specific client you choose to test your intervention on actually represents the broader population you eventually want to generalize to.
Makes total sense. And what is the final illusion?
Differential attrition.
Attrition just means dropping out, right?
Yes, attrition refers to participants dropping out of a study. Differential attrition happens when participants drop out at different rates between your experimental groups, or they drop out for reasons directly related to the study itself.
Let's use a parent training program as an example here.
Perfect.
Imagine you are running a clinic, testing a new intensive training program for parents dealing with severe problem behavior.
And it's an intensive program.
Super demanding. It requires massive data collection at home, hours of reading, and weekly video submissions.
I can see exactly where the data is going to fall apart.
Right. Half the parents drop out by week 3 because it is just too much work on top of raising a child with severe needs.
So who is left?
The parents who stay in the program are the ones who are highly motivated, have more financial resources, more free time, and robust support systems.
And at the end of the 6-month study, your data shows that the parent training program is 100% effective for the remaining participants.
But that 100% success rate is a complete mathematical illusion.
It is only effective for the highly resourced, highly motivated parents who didn't quit.
You lost all the data from the parents who actually struggled, which artificially inflates your success rate.
The attrition fundamentally changed the core makeup of your study group.
So to control for this, you cannot just look at the survivors.
You have to track exactly who drops out and why.
You have to analyze the differences between those who remain and those who leave to see if the attrition itself is masking a catastrophic failure in your independent variable.
If you don't account for the dropouts, you are publishing fiction, not science.
Wow. Let's take a breath and bring all of these concepts together. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today.
We really have.
For everyone listening, If you were jotting down study notes or building flashcards, here is your definitive recap of the magnificent 7 threats to internal validity.
Number 1.
First, history external, real-world events happening at the same time as your intervention.
Number 2.
Second, maturation, the client naturally growing, biologically changing, or simply outgrowing the behavior.
Number 3.
Third, testing the simple act of being measured, fundamentally changing how the client acts.
Number 4.
Fourth, instrumentation, your measurement tools or your human observers wearing out, drifting, or changing how they score.
Number 5.
Fifth, statistical regression, an extreme outlier day naturally pulling back toward the mathematical average.
Number 6.
Sixth, selection bias, picking a non-representative skewed group that was doomed to succeed or fail from the start.
And number 7.
And seventh, differential attrition, people dropping out of your intervention, artificially making your final numbers look infinitely better than they truly are.
It is a gauntlet of variables,
Yep.
and it is vital to remember why you should care about this beyond just passing a multiple-choice board exam.
Absolutely.
In the real clinical world, relentlessly controlling for these 7 threats is the dividing line between a clinician who practices true evidence-based science and one who relies on guesswork, coincidence, and luck.
Because if you do not control for internal validity, you are essentially flying blind, constantly taking credit for the weather changing.
Exactly.
We spend all this time in behavior analysis building these elaborate fortresses, reversal designs, inter-observer agreement calculations, stable trend lines, all designed to rigidly isolate our intervention and completely block out the chaotic variables of the outside world.
It's a lot of defensive work.
But consider this, if human behavior in the real world is constantly, undeniably driven by personal history, by natural maturation, and by shifting, unpredictable environments, what if the ultimate goal of our science shouldn't be to definitively defeat and exclude all those external variables? What if the next frontier is designing flexible interventions that actually harness them? Think about that the next time you look at a perfectly clean, perfectly trending graph.